This is the WGBH Forum Network.
My mission today is twofold. I was originally asked to speak about the city of Atlanta and our region and where we are today and our future prospects, and I am going to talk about that, but I have expanded my remarks a little bit because I want to spend some time talking about Grady Hospital. We have an urgent and serious issue at Grady, and we need to discuss it, and Grady needs your help. But first I'll start with the good news part of my talk, and that's talk about our region and our city. Now, I'm sure most of you have recently heard that the Census Bureau has declared that our metropolitan region is the fastest growing urban center in the United States. Almost 1 million people, I think, Chick, we've added since 2000. And the city of Atlanta, after a couple decades of decline from a population perspective, is once again growing and growing quite handsomely. The census had projected back in 2000 that the metro region would grow by about 2.3 million people between now and 2030. But it appears that we will in fact grow much faster than that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if it wasn't more like 3 million people between now, additional people between now and 2030. Now, to many people in our city and our region, this is not good news. Infrastructure issues and other issues have created quite a no-growth sentiment among a lot of our peers. Well, not growing is really not an option, and it's also really not a good idea. Just organic growth in the metropolitan region between now and 2030, that's births minus deaths, is expected to be about 1.5 million people now. The only way we can not grow is for you to leave town or ask your kids to leave town. You have a choice. Other than that, we're going to grow, and we're going to grow quite substantially. So dealing with that growth, growing smart, making good decisions, is a critical ingredient to our community's future success. Now, by the way, growth is good. You would expect me to say that as a developer, right? And you should. But growth is good. I have lived in many cities throughout the United States during my career, which Craig kindly called varied. That's very nice. My varied career. My mother described it in other ways. And I tell you, growing beats the heck out of shrinking. As long as we have growth, we have jobs for our kids and their kids. We have the money to support infrastructure, the money to support the arts and entertainment and the many other things that we have come to rely on and to count on here in our metropolitan region, and that build a great part of our quality of life. The city of Atlanta is also growing. I said it 2 decades. During the 80s, Atlanta shrunk, and during the 90s, we were basically flat. But since 2000, the population here, according once again to the census, has grown to about 480,000 people. That's almost a 20%, 18% growth since the year 2000. And we learned several things about our city and our city's likely future during the Peachtree Corridor Task Force research that we did, and which was discussed a little bit earlier. We are going to see very significant changes in our city over these next 15 years. We're going to see a significant increase in population. Our estimates would be that the population in 2020 will be over 700,000 people. I think it's 720,000 is where the study ended up. And 480 to 720,000 people in a relatively short period of time, that's a lot of growth for our community. And since you already know that I think growth is good, then that's a good news story. Why are we going to grow? What is compelling us to grow? What are the trends out there that are making this happen? Well, there are 3 basic things that are happening that are real, and that, by the way, they're not unique to the city of Atlanta or to our metropolitan region. They're really seen throughout the new cities of the South and Southeast or the Sun Belt. And the first is that young people are coming south. I think the city of Atlanta or the Atlanta metropolitan area has been either first or second for 7 consecutive years among graduating college seniors as a place that they would like to go and look for employment. We have the second largest university population in the United States. Did you know that? You know, we don't talk about that very much, but Atlanta is second only to Boston in our university population. And you may have noticed that they stay here. They come here and they stay here. And why is that? Well, it's because this is a great city with a great quality of life. So people are coming to Atlanta. They're staying in Atlanta. Young people are getting married later. I think the data says it's gone from 23, 25 to 25, 27. They're having children later, gone from 25 to 27 to 27 to 32, and therefore they're staying in town longer. They're staying in an urban environment for a longer period of time. So they come here to go to school, they stick around for a longer period of time. That's sort of the first trend. The second is about the boomers. And I notice there's a few boomers like myself here in the audience. And there's 86 million baby boomers in the United States. And increasingly their kids are, leaving home. And as they leave home, you sort of drive home after work and you sit down to have that glass of wine or that cocktail and you stare at your spouse and you think to yourself, now what the hell are we supposed to do? And then, you sort of look at your, hey, you want to go out to dinner? Yeah, let's go out to dinner. Where would you like to go? How many of you have had this experience? Where would you like to go? Oh, any place you want to go, sweetheart. Fine with me. Well, really, where would you like to go? Okay, I like to go to Bones. Bones? We always go to, okay, honey, wherever you want to go. You got to get in your car, you got to drive from the burbs. And so they're coming back in town. They're coming back. And this is a real phenomenon, not just happening here, but happening in lots of places. There's another reason that they're coming back, and they're buying that 2-bedroom condominium. And it's called the rebound generation. Our kids are coming back. If you still live in that big house in the suburbs, and their room's still there, you're going to see a lot of them. Move into that condo and fill it up with junk. There's no place for them to go. Put them on a fold-out couch. They only last about a month. So that's the second trend. Boomers are moving back. And then the third is that most of these Sunbelt cities have grown so quickly that they've outgrown their infrastructure. Now, this, by the way, is nobody's fault. It's easy to say, we didn't do this, we didn't do that, we should have done this, we should have. But the simple truth is you can't build infrastructure as fast as our population grew. So we're always sort of behind the curve, and we still are. And we're trying to catch up. We're doing the best we can. And as we've outgrown our infrastructure and we've created some significant traffic issues for ourselves, people who don't have to live far away from work are moving closer to work. So our city is going to continue to grow. Our tax base is going to improve significantly, which is going to provide us with improved infrastructure and transit. And I think we're quickly becoming, Spurge, a destination city with the addition of many of the things that we have seen and that we plan to create here in the greater Atlanta area. And becoming a destination city, by the way, is worth literally hundreds of millions of tax dollars to support the many needs that we have here in the community. I forget what the number is, Spurs, but if we could get all our conventioners to spend one more night in town, it produces a lot of wealth, doesn't it, Michael? Huge. So Atlanta's making good progress, but our future success is certainly not guaranteed. We face many challenges. We've got to continue to make progress in education. We have our infrastructure issues that we've discussed. We have a very significant housing issue in our city, the ability to provide affordable housing close to where people work. We have some land use issues. There is, as I said earlier, a limits to growth attitude in a great part of the metropolitan region, not in my backyard, and that's not really going to work. We need to get people closer to where they work and closer where infrastructure exists and can be used. We have transportation issues that we discussed. We have serious water issues, among others. But we also have great momentum, and we have excellent leadership in the public sector, in the private sector, in the not-for-profit sector, in our university communities. But no city, in fact, no organization can rest at a state of equilibrium. Every day we're either getting better or we're getting worse. And we've had a great run here in the Atlanta metro area and in the city of Atlanta, but our success is not guaranteed. It's no sure thing. So what is required to continue to build on the momentum that we have? Well, first of all, it's all about leadership. In all of my varied occupations that I've had, I found that one thing is absolutely true, and that is that whether I was in the government sector or in the private sector, in the various jobs I've had, whether it was running a think tank for the Navy or running a think tank at the Hudson Institute, or in my present job, it's all about leadership. Organizations that are well run succeed. Organizations that are not well led fail. They might not fail immediately. Momentum will carry you a ways, but ultimately they'll fail. So job one is guaranteeing high quality leadership for our city. And that's not just in the public sector, which by the way is our responsibility to pick that leadership. It's across the board. The second thing we have to sustain is Atlanta's secret weapon. And that is this partnership culture that exists here, which I've frankly never seen in any other community that I've lived in to the extent that exists here. There is a powerful bond and partnership between the public sector and the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, our educational sector, and this city that seems willing and able to attack any issue, any problem, strive for and achieve almost any goal. But once again, that's not a given and that's not a sure thing. That has to be sustained. That means that the people in this room and the people that you work with and your kids have to follow in your footsteps. You know? They have to show up. They have to join the Rotary. They have to be involved in the issues that confront our city and our state, in our region. This committed partnership has created a huge difference. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee. And when I was growing up in Memphis, Atlanta and Memphis and Birmingham were all about the same size, similar histories. Now Atlanta has leaped beyond any other city in the Southeast. It's the capital of the Southeast. And what do you attribute that to? Well, yeah, we've got a great climate. You know, the topography is nice. We were the first one to have the guts to build a real honest-to-goodness airport, and we continue to invest. We had some excellent leadership in the early years. But basically, it's this partnership, this commitment that the people in this community have today and have had for 50 years to getting the job done. You know, whether it's race relations or whether it's the Olympics or whether it's some of the problems that face us today. Get the job done. That seems to be the way things happen here in Atlanta. This has created good jobs and a good quality of life. And we continue to produce good jobs here in our region. And, you know, with good jobs, you get a good quality of life. They sort of one follows the other. And as long as we're growing and as long as we're producing good jobs, I think our future is assured. But those jobs don't come without a lot of hard work. I learned that when I was at the chamber. I remember Sam Williams telling me initially, he says, well, Tom, we just have one meeting a month, you know. He's a liar. But I have to admit that's what I told my successor, too. But it takes a lot of work to guarantee that future success. And it requires an intense focus on our issues. You know, I found that there are a lot of cities, and particularly political entities that are sort of in a perpetual state of denial. When I was at the Hudson Institute, we used to call the Congress of the United States the lagging indicator of lagging indicators. You know, by the time the Congress of the United States really wrestled with an issue, everybody else had, dealt with it and moved on. And that hasn't changed much. We can't afford to be in denial here in our city and in our state. Growth is great, but it requires a lot of work and effort to do it right. So we've got to sort of look our problems and our issues right in the eye and to deal with them one at a time, and we have to deal with them together. It's not really something the other guy can do, We can't leave our problems to government. We've proven that doesn't work. We can't just leave them to the market, It has to be the government and the private sector and the markets all working together to solve our issues. It's what you do so well. As long as we stay focused and support high-quality leadership and demand high-quality leadership and sustain and grow this partnership to the next generation, we're going to be very successful. Now on to Grady, the not-so-good news. What is Grady? And by the way, I'm speaking to you today about Grady as an individual. I'm a member of the task force and have been involved in it from the very beginning, since its creation. But I'm not speaking for the task force. I'm speaking for myself. What is Grady? Well, Grady is one of the top teaching hospitals in the world. Many people here in this city think it's an indigent care hospital, and it is. It's also one of the greatest teaching hospitals in the world. It's where our Emory and Morehouse physicians learn their skills and their trade. It's produced almost 30% of all the doctors in this state have come out of Grady. It's our only level 1 trauma center in North Georgia, the only burn center in the state, or one of 2 burn centers in the state, and the only rural poison center in the state. It's the primary provider for our indigent population. It has over 30,000 overnight stays a year and almost 1 million outpatient visits a year. It's world-class in many research disciplines. How does Grady look today? Well, it's insolvent. Negative cash flow today at Grady, if they paid all their bills, runs about $8 to $9 million a month. Most vendors at Grady, with the exception of Morehouse and Emory, are on the COD status. Has to be paid for in advance or you don't get it. Grady owes Morehouse and Emory about $45 million, and we'll owe them about $75 million by the end of the year. Basically, Emory and Morehouse are supporting Grady today. The equipment at Grady is not being maintained, and it's not being replaced. Today we have a $300 million plus shortfall on the capital side, and it grows every day. Grady will not be able to meet payroll sometime in the fourth quarter, probably in the second week of November, having exhausted all its sources of cash. Only 50% of Grady's patients have any source of payment. So 1 out of every 2 patients that walk through the doors at Grady is being treated for free. What happens if Grady fails? Maybe it's not our problem. Maybe it won't have any effect on us. Well, if you think that, you're dead wrong. If Grady were to fail and these 1 million patients have to find health care elsewhere, every emergency room in the metropolitan region will be overwhelmed. You better hope you stay well. If you have a heart attack, if you're in a wreck, a fire, an accident, and you need emergency care, you won't be able to get it in a timely fashion at Piedmont or Emory Crawford Long or Emory or St. Joe's or any other hospital in the metropolitan region. They will all be overwhelmed. We'll have no level 1 trauma center. And by the way, there are no volunteers to become a level 1 trauma center. No burn center, no poison center. Every other metro hospital in the region will go into a deficit situation. And once that happens, they'll begin their decline. In short, we'll have a major healthcare crisis that will affect every person in this room, every person that works with and for you, all your children and grandchildren. How did this happen? Who should we blame? Well, there's nobody to blame, really. And believe me, I've looked. The funding for Grady is basically from the two principal counties, Fulton and DeKalb County, has basically been flat for 14 years. During that time, annual healthcare inflation has been 8 to 10%. Our population has increased by 2 million people. Our indigent population has probably increased by a higher percentage. Federal funding has declined across the board. That's what's happened to Grady. And by the way, it's happened to many other public hospitals throughout the United States. Well, what can we do? Well, first we have to change the governance structure of Grady Hospital. I think this is correct. I think Grady is the only hospital in the state of Georgia, only public hospital still operating under the 42 statute. Every other major public hospital in our state has elected to create a 501c3 not-for-profit entity over the hospital. And basically it leases the facilities from the authority, and it provides all the management, clinical care, et cetera, that's required. Now, why has this happened? Because the 42 statute doesn't allow Grady to do anything other than treat its patients. It can't have a hospice. It can't provide transportation. It can't do a lot of the outpatient services that are done by most hospitals that make money. If you go there with a broken leg, it can't sell you a pair of crutches under this statute. As a 501c3, we can put together a broad board that represents a larger community than just Fulton and DeKalb. It can be non-political, which it should be. It's very different. You know, you might not know this, but the authority board is appointed by the county commissions. In Fulton County, they're appointed by individual commissioners. In DeKalb County, they're appointed by the CEO. It's very hard to be have the major funder and the fiduciary be the same person. That doesn't work well, does it, Jack? No. We really need to have that checks and balances that exist in a normal board circumstance, in a normal governance circumstance. So we need a new governance system for Grady, and I think there's a good chance that we can get that. We need to increase our funding from the two primary counties, and we need to index that funding to inflation, just to the CPI. We need to create a net funding agreement with the out counties so that when people from Cobb County are served at Grady, Cobb County gets paid, and when people from Fulton and DeKalb are served at Cobb County gets paid. The out counties are not crazy about this idea so far. We need to get additional funding from the state. The easiest areas are in trauma, DISH, and medical education. To give you an example, it's possible under the law to pay up to $10,000 per student. These are federal and state mingled dollars. $10,000 per student for every student that's going through the process at Grady. We pay $2. So that alone would be $15 to $17 million of additional income. And I've talked to the governor several times. I know he was here last week. He's prepared to help, and the legislature's prepared to help, as long as we put together a governance structure that they can have confidence in, that's non-political, and as long as we have a plan for success. We need to bring in a major operations consulting organization to modernize the information technology, to modernize the revenue cycle management and other administrative and operational functions, and we've got to get somebody to do it on a contingency basis because we can't pay them. We can only pay them as they are successful. We have to renegotiate all our major contracts. And once this is done, perhaps most difficult, we have to immediately acquire a $125 million bridge loan to keep the place in business long enough to make these changes. We need about 25 to $30 million in immediate capital money, and then we need about $90 to $100 million in operational monies. Grady is insolvent. Grady is going to fail unless we do something about it. Now, every day they perform miracles at Grady. In spite of all this, they're still providing exceptional health care to an extremely difficult clinical population. They're there every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I've had the opportunity to be in that hospital several times recently. I went there on a Saturday night because I wanted to see it for myself. You wouldn't believe it. They have stripes on the floors of the hall where they put beds and numbers so that they can keep up with the population. They don't have room for everybody. They run out of room in the halls. Sometimes they have them stacked double in the halls. But these docs, these nurses, these administrators are literally performing miracles every day. But they can't do it much longer without our help. In fact, the sad truth is that Emory and Morehouse will not be able to teach there much longer because they simply won't have the materials with which to teach if we don't step in and do something. So my request for you today is, if you live in Fulton or DeKalb County, get in touch with your commissioner. Tell them how important Grady is to you and to this community, and that you hope that they will support aggressively increased funding for Grady Hospital, a change in the governance structure, and the other issues that we've talked about today. It is a Rotarian challenge that I hope you will embrace. Good news, we have a great city with a growing population, a job machine, a wonderful quality of life. The bad news is we have an urgent issue with our healthcare system that we have to address. We can succeed. It's been done in other places, and we will succeed. But we can't do it without your help. Thank you very much.
Tom has graciously agreed to answer questions for a few minutes. Do we have any? Jack?
Thank you so much for your very message. I do appreciate it. The governor was here, and he did, in fact, answer questions about this. He indicated he did not want to put money down at old dark hole where the Constitution is. So, emphasize the need for leadership. And I think there's no question that I think the Rotary is a fine place to begin. I can also assure you that the healthcare industry in this community and in this region will be delighted to step up if there's some leadership to get them started. I think they'll get behind it, they'll push hard with the commissioners, they'll push hard with state legislators over it, and we go. And I would encourage that sort of activity, every one of us across this board. Thank you.
Well, you're exactly right, Doctor, and I think that we have seen an outpouring of support from the medical community. And I've had many of the presidents and CEOs of the metro hospitals, many members of the healthcare community like yourself. We've gone to see many of them, but many of them have called us up, said, tell us when, where, and how. We'll be there for you. And admittedly, in some cases, it's in their own self-interest, obviously, but no one wants to see Grady fail. No one wants to see it fail.
David?
We really appreciate your passion, Tom, for what you've accomplished already. And you're right, we've got it here. There's no second chance out there. And if we don't get together as a unit and get it done, it's going to pass us by, and you cannot recover. It'll be an irreversible failure. So, Tom, thank you for your passion for the board of business.
I appreciate that. we're going to put out our task force report the end of this month. And I'm sure Maria and her colleagues at the AJC and the other media outlets here will help educate our citizenry, but that's when we really need to go to work, between now and then after that report comes out, if we're going to get this done.
I have a theological question down here for Bob.
Tom, I started my career at Grady Hospital. I was the second night administrator. And unless the state and these freeloading counties take over their responsibility, it's a lost cause in my judgment. And it's going to take somebody like you to get the money out. Because the metropolitan area, 31 counties, they freeload off of Fulton and DeKalb County, and they have always since it was organized in 1946.
I think the state is prepared to help under certain circumstances. I think the governor made that clear, did he not, last week when he was here? I found out an interesting thing about these other counties, though, because my friends at Grady kept telling me, it's $25 or $30 million of services that we provide to their indigent patients every year at Grady. But what they didn't tell me was that was a gross number, not a net number. And if you take all the services that their hospitals provide for Fulton and DeKalb patients, well, then the number is not quite so impressive. So we're still working on that. But it seems to me that it's a very plausible request from our standpoint to create a net payment system among all the counties. We know where the person lives when they're admitted to the hospital, whether it's on an inpatient or outpatient basis. So all we have to do is on a quarterly basis net the numbers. Either we owe Cobb County a few bucks or they owe us a few bucks, and vice versa throughout the counties. And hopefully that'll be part of the solution.
Al?
I've been at Grady and Emory for a number of years, and a key part about other counties is that every public health nurse in the state of Georgia from other counties has a selective Grady address that she gives her patients, and so they come from all counties. And once you have a Fulton DeKalb County address, you can get in. And the nurses around the state know how to do that. So I think that's open access. But the other statement is I don't believe Atlanta has ever failed to answer a question that it was brave enough to ask, quote, from the past in office. But I think that certainly Emory Morehouse is prepared to do its share. But I think Atlanta also.
I appreciate that. And Emory and Morehouse have done its share. I'm sure they'll continue to do more. But the question has been asked, and now we need to answer it. And I think it takes the collective action of Rotarians like yourself and others throughout the city and the metropolitan region if we're going to get the job done. Thank you all very much.